This story is pretty dang wild. The tale of Trump's advisors rushing into the Oval Office to beg him, stop, please stop. I'll give you that in just a second. But first, the context. You may know Peter Navaro. This is one of the characters at the center of this story. So let me remind you about who he is before getting into the meat of this. This is Peter Navaro, whom, as I told you before, I bumped into in my apartment before I moved out of DC. And I said, what the?
Every dollar, Jesse, every single dollar, I promise this, that we raise from foreign nations, from the tariffs, is going to go back to Americans in the form of tax cuts and in the form of debt reduction. And
there's a lot of weapons in the arsenal.
So shut up, Jesse. He's one of the best. There's a lot of weapons you got a lot of tools in your toolbox. There's a lot of bad advisors within the White House, but he is definitely one of the worst. Here is him. Please do click the subscribe button, by the way. Here's him on CNN.
Any other way.
So we've got a graphic that shows other recent trade deal negotiations. Okay, we can put it up for viewers. With Central America, 16 months. The USMCA, 15 months. South Korea, 14 months. Australia, 14 months. We tried to do it with the UK, our strongest allies. It was paused after 3 years and 7 months. How can you do any single one of these in 90 days, let alone all of them?
Hang on, you're missing the whole point. Those kind of deals. Yes, Bill.
Look, I must be confident about what I'm saying. Look at the way I'm moving my finger very authoritatively.
Let me explain. The kind of deals like the renegotiation and NAFTA and all of that, that's governed by a set of rules and laws that will take time to do that. What we're going to do is...
Right, but like the US-UK one is not under that.
All right, a mess. In the first clip, by the way, he says... the money we're going to be raising from foreign countries will go to us. Okay, so just to give you a sense of why there was a coup inside of the White House against Peter Navaro, I think that they heard things like that and him saying we're charging forward on the full Liberation Day stuff. And he's saying that we're going to, through tax cuts, which will mostly go to the richest, we're going to be paid back or we're going to be given the money that's raised from foreign nations. Yeah, but that's not what a tariff is. So really, you're just taking money from us and giving it to us, but the only us that get the money at the end are the rich people. And then last little context clip, Trump, remember, right before reversing many of his tariffs, said he wasn't going to.
Mr. President, to the markets today, and would you be open to a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations?
Well, we're not looking at that. We have many countries that are coming to...
Yeah, you even had a White House spokesperson saying that it was fake news that they were going to pause it. We talked about that before. So then why did they pause it? Why not all of them? That should be emphasized, by the way. Still, we're seeing increases in prices because of the 10% baseline across the board, the economic uncertainty, and the trade war with China. But he did pause a lot of the quote-unquote reciprocal that weren't reciprocal, that were these ridiculous formulas, tariffs. He did pause those after saying he wasn't going to, and it being called fake news. The day they got imposed, he paused them. Okay, so why? Well, that brings us to this fascinating story of the inner workings of the White House. Mediaite reports Trump cabinet officials rushed to Oval Office to convince Trump to scale back tariffs while trade advisor Peter Navaro was away. So they found a little window of time when Peter Navaro would not know. And they rushed into the Oval Office and said, "Sir," tears pouring down their face. They said, "Sir, this is going to be bad," which is essentially what we've been telling Trump, but he didn't listen to us. But I guess he did listen to them, and that's why he reversed. Two of President Donald Trump's cabinet officials conspired to confront Donald Trump on scaling back tariffs while trade advisor Peter Navaro was away from the Oval Office. The paper reported Friday that on the morning of April 9th, amid market turmoil, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick saw a small window to convince Trump to scale back his tariff plan and took it. The two reportedly acted quickly while Navaro, one of Trump's most vocal advocates for tariffs, was occupied in a separate meeting with economic advisor Kevin Hassett. The betrayal, the backstabbing, the intrigue. Writing for the Journal, you had these authors say Navaro isn't one to back down during policy debates and had stridently urged Trump to keep tariffs in place, even as corporate chieftains and other advisors urged him to relent. And Navaro had been regularly around the Oval Office since Trump's Liberation Day event. He was sort of guarding the Oval Office door. Don't come in. Don't tell him to reverse. So that morning when Navaro was scheduled to meet with the economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, in a different part of the White House, Bessent and Lutnick made their move. According to multiple people familiar with the intervention, they rushed to the Oval Office to see Trump and propose a pause on some of the tariffs without Navaro there to argue or push back. They knew they had a tight window. The meeting with Bessent and Lutnick wasn't on Trump's schedule. Trump agreed with Bessent and Lutnick and later announced a partial rollback on social media, which was said to have caught Navaro off guard. And then Navaro said, "That's not true, okay? Can you, all right?" Essentially. Not verbatim, but essentially. "Guys, would you, I was in the meeting too. Stop it." The White House did not deny the report via statement from the spokesman. Oh, they did it. That's so funny. They did it to Peter again. They said, we betrayed you and snuck into the Oval Office to convince Trump to do what you didn't want him to do. And then we didn't get you on the same page that we weren't going to deny it. So the real quote from Navaro was, "More mischief from anonymous sources seeking to divide and conquer the trade team." And the White House is like, yeah, sort of. President Trump has assembled an all-star trade and economic team to implement his America First agenda, finally address the country's national emergency and persistent trade deficits. Every member of the Trump administration is playing on one playbook, President Trump's playbook. That playbook just is an absolute cluster. You know what? To level the playing field for our workers and industries and restore American greatness. So yeah, they didn't deny it, and then Navaro kind of did deny it, once again being embarrassed by his own supposed BFFs. We said it was for life. Now, what's interesting is Lutnick defends these. It's so interesting when you hear these behind the scenes stories because it runs so contrary to what they try to posture publicly. Yeah, we were all on the same page. I love too, by the way, it was Bessent who came out and said, we decided many days ago that this was going to be the plan. This was a strategic play. And now we learned that he was going, "Please, Trump, today the market's crashing. We don't know what to do." And so if you see them and you go, they must have a plan because they're speaking really confidently, you can know that's not true. That's not true at all. It's just what they're performing. And then when Lutnick goes on and says these tariffs are genius, he's privately saying, roll them back. And also you absolute, I wish I could say more insulting words. Poo-poo face. You guys act like this plan is our path to prosperity. So why are you convincing Trump to roll it back? Now, I know why, because you don't believe that, and that's not our path to prosperity. But you're convincing us we had to weather pain, and we were being quote-unquote panicans. Oh, it's so funny. Because we were scared of the impact of Trump's unilateral trade war with every single country and with penguins. And you all tried to convince us that that was reasonable and we were being crazy. And you were just as panicking. Howard, Scott, that's what I thought. Now, going further, this clip of Trump being asked about in his meeting with the Italian prime minister if she had convinced him to change any of the trade approaches to Italy, Trump says,
about tariffs and what you plan to do going forward? No. Anything the Prime Minister said to you that changed your perspective?
No, tariffs are making us rich. We were...
Then why'd you roll a bunch of them back? Why'd you roll a bunch of them back, sir? Why won't the reporters do that? I don't get it. Let me in that room. We were denied.
Losing a lot of money under Biden. Trillions of dollars, trillions on trade. And now that whole tide has turned. We're making...
It hasn't. So let me show you. Wonderful and amazing producer Cole put together the video that I'm about to play. Show Cole. Say hi to the good people, Cole. He put together this video because if they had a thoughtful plan, they wouldn't be so haphazard. They wouldn't be so discombobulated. You wouldn't have secret meetings rushing into the Oval Office to beg Trump to stop if they had a coherent plan. And this video very much illustrates, and on screen for our podcast listeners, I'll describe that it's switching between tariffs on, tariffs off. So if you hear the contradiction in the audio clips, that's what's being portrayed. This is what we're really seeing. No coherence.
Into a pause in tariffs to allow for negotiations.
Well, we're not looking at that.
The proposed U.S. tariffs on Canada, set to go into effect tonight at midnight, are going to be paused for at least 30 days.
He's not considering an extension or a delay. He expects that these tariffs are going to go into effect. In the meantime, there will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs as these negotiations are ongoing.
There's no postponing. They are definitely going to stay in place for days and weeks. That is
Howard, he was literally looking at Navaro's schedule before that interview, seeing if he could go convince Trump to roll some of these back. And on TV, what a ridiculous question. We are definitely gonna keep them in place.
stay in place for days and weeks. That is sort of obvious.
You just have to let Donald Trump drive the car, drive the ship, drive the plane, however you want to call it. Donald Trump is in charge. He understands how to do this.
We're going to hold the course, and this has been years in the building, years in the making. This was driven by the president's strategy. He and I had a long talk on Sunday, and this was his strategy all along.
Well, I thought that people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy.
They were getting yippy. And now we learned by people, he meant his own Treasury and Commerce secretaries. I'll leave it there. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you appreciate this show's work, you can click the join button below.